How's it going, summoners, and welcome back to another ProGuides Wild Rift video. Are you tired of one-sided games that feel absolutely awful? When you're on the losing side, of course. And don't sweat it, and we got you covered for exactly this. With the strongest champions that are too broken to be left open, or in other words, pick them as much as you can. And on the very first spot, we got Vayne. This champion is absolutely busted. It deals way too much damage, is too agile and destroys anything that goes close to her. But on the other side, her biggest issue is only mana. So whenever you're facing a Vayne, you usually think, well, her weakest part is the laning phase. Nonetheless, in Wild Rift the laning phase isn't really long. It really isn't. And in Wild Rift, Vayne has a different mechanic on her second ability. It is an attack speed steroid, which in combination with the auto attack cancel of her first ability, grant her abnormal levels of power. Nonetheless, there's something you have to be very careful of when you think about playing Vayne. Her third ability consumes most of her mana, so be really careful when you want to use it. Using it once or twice in the laning phase will really damage your mana pool and therefore your outplay potential in the upcoming moments. Nonetheless, whenever Vayne is picked, a certain X factor is added to the game, and you can already feel pressured. The reason for this is the fact that as the game goes on, you'll more and more get into the Vayne territory, or just getting insta-killed by her. Now if you add a Lulu to the mix, and you can already say goodbye to your OP. I'm fairly certain that most of you can remember the old Jinx and Lulu meta. It is even worse if you go it with a Vayne, because Vayne has no problems dealing with any tanky target. But if you value your solo QLP, make sure to ban the Vayne. You don't need to be faker to be playing this champion, it is easier than you think, especially if you get used to using the active second ability. Other than that, it's just about not getting yourself killed by tumbling into the enemy, trying to be the most Gosu-like player you can. And after this, we are now taking a small break for a question of the day. What are your thoughts on the current battle pass? Praise, hate, legit anything, and just share it in the comments below. And at the same time, while you're at it, don't forget the like and subscribe button. And from one overpowered pick to another one, Diana in the middle lane yet again. Diana is by far one of the most tankiest champions in the game you can ask for. Even Galio is not even close to that level, and all of that thanks to two things. Number one, her second ability. Number two, her Rod of Ages. And if you combine both of them, this champion is more than just borderline demonic. And if you're really honest about this champion, it falls into the category of champions that always win if you are the better player. Unless of course jungle differential is hitting you too hard again. However, just being aware of how your first ability and your third ability interact, you can use minions as proxy targets to dash into the enemy champions and just go back instantly after again. And don't forget, your third ability is an auto-attack reset, which means easy free damage and going away in an instant. And if you understand how tanky you will become after Rod of Ages and your W gets a few points, well, you're not really going to die. And unless you can shut down Diana with reliable CC and an exhaust, it's going to be just a matter of time until you get utterly destroyed in a teamfight. Because as this champion gets items, which are usually Rod of Ages into Rabadons into then either Lich Bane, a Void Staff or a Nash's Tooth, you can pick your poison here, you'll literally destroy anything you touch, and getting to a backline as a Diana isn't something that is too hard. You can instantly do so. You can hit somebody in the middle of the fight with your first ability, use your third ability and then jump into the backline and just instantly demolish them or force all of their summoner spells. And the other problematic thing about Diana is her third ability's range. Depending on what device you're playing on, you'll most likely be able to dash outside of your screen range. And if anybody isn't adjusting his screen constantly to the flow of the fight, he'll get engaged by you from out of his field of vision, which means his reaction time will be severely impacted and you'll have an easy time finishing him off. And now from here we move to another champion who really isn't easy to be finished off. Renekton. Renekton is a champion that you should consider banning because he's so obnoxious to deal with. You can confidently pick him into anything in lane and maintain a stable position throughout the game. On top of that, Renekton can be played with a low economy and just be a punching bag for the enemy team with whom they have to deal. Because if the Renekton gets into your backline, which he easily can if he utilizes two of his third abilities, he just stuns somebody and they'll get instantly one-shot. And if all of that wasn't enough, thanks to his second ability's reliable stun, diving this champion isn't the easiest. He can just start with a Ruby Crystal if you really wanted to, and then if he has access to his ultimate ability, diving him is just not a thing you should even consider unless he is significantly low on HP. Other than that, in solo queue you can always rush Blade of the Ruined King, and as you complete it, you'll quickly understand how terrifying this champion can be. Just one empowered use of a second ability will send almost every Baron laner already halfway back into the fountain. I've done it with Yasuos, I've done it with Fioras, I've done it with anybody. If they disrespect their Renekton, they'll get killed instantly. Even a tower is nothing that will protect them, because auto-attack into empowered W are 4 procs of the Blade of the Ruined King, which is empowered for melee users. And if you add the base damage on top, well, you are in a whole lot of trouble. And if this wasn't already bad enough, his ultimate deals quite a lot of damage per second on top. However, in certain matchups you have to sometimes relax. Up until to level 3 and then you can start playing the game. Usually on level 3 Renekton beats anybody if he has enough fury and life to work with. So please be healthy enough to make use of that. And our next champion is an absolute demon-like existence for the support role, and I'm talking about Rakan. A lot of people make fun of him as a champion, but he is quite broken. And thanks to the courtesy of Riot Games, there's no reason for Rakan not to build Rod of Ages as his first item. It grants him everything he wants, and that only with the exception of cooldown reduction or ability haste. And if you add a Zeke's afterwards, you will see how much damage this support champion can do. And with Zeke's empowering your allies on top of granting you even more damage, you will see what happens in the teamfight. And with the mobile hitboxes being messed up quite a lot, his second ability is going to hit you more than you think it actually does. Similar to the Nami bubbles. But the biggest issue with this champion and why he is exactly so unbelievably broken on this format is that Rakan's engages are fast and deadly, and they are too fast and too deadly at that. Given that we are playing on mobile devices on a mobile environment, it's really hard to always react in time due to plenty of reasons. This isn't PC League of Legends, and reaction time is a huge factor here, even just from the hardware. Therefore, taking into account how fast he can CC your entire team, it's a very scary thought to leave him open. And if it was only the CC, it would be not as problematic. However, this champion deals so much damage because of the possibility of going Rod of Ages in his insane AP scalings. You really don't want to face this champion. And whenever you're playing support, you should really consider playing this champion. Always, especially in duo scenarios, it is just too unbelievably strong. And once again, he features one specific tool that can be used on mobile quite a lot. You can abuse the size of your screen and the relative engage distance. Just using his flash into his second ability or even a protoball if you really wanted to, he can close the gap quite fast and there's no way, if you're not prepared, that you're able to react to it. And once you're caught in the fray, you'll instantly get blown up, because that's just the way the game works. And now let's move on to the last pick of this list. You won't even think of this pick too much, because it's a rising pick. And here we have Jarvan for you. With the recent buff to Black Cleaver and the overall way of how his first ability works, Jarvan quickly takes away a big chunk of the enemy's armor and HP. With that, and the enemy being caged in his no fun allowed zone, they'll be blasted into the next game within a fraction of a second. And if that wasn't bad enough, building Jarvan with a supportive item build such as Black Cleaver, Zeke's Convergence, Abyssal Mask and the occasional Sunfire does way more damage than you might expect. However, you may also think about the lethality build. You'll be able to one-shot people, but if you end up building that way, you'll get blown up as fast as you're blowing them up, so use it at your own risk. However, the tanky supportive build is especially potent if you're playing with other people you can rely on, especially pre-made AD carries, mid laners or whatever you can think of. It bolsters their damage by so crazy amounts you won't even believe it, while at the same time making you a lot tankier than you also might believe it. It's not always the best way to build selfishly. Sometimes it's really helpful to take a look at those supportive items. They are really undervalued. And if you were to look at this constellation of champions of this entire list, you could compose an entire team of those champions and steamroll over your enemies. Just Jarvan and Diana alone will destroy the enemy in such ways you can't even imagine. And if you add a Rakan for the CC and the Vayne for the DPS and the Renekton for the tankiness on top, how can the enemy win? It's not going to be an easy way. And even standalone, all of those champions provide such insane value that you should never, and I repeat never, leave them open unless you want to pick them. And with that, that's it for today's video. Thank you all for watching, and if you enjoyed the content, make sure to leave a like and sub to the channel, and then we'll see you tomorrow. Peace.